Welcome to our first edition of Tequity Talks, where in support of International Women's Day and Women's History Month, we'll be chatting about how companies can truly create diverse, equitable and inclusive environments whilst addressing the importance of transparent pay conversations. Tequity Talks is on a mission to inspire the world of technology to respect intersectionality in all its forms, have conversations with guests who share their personal experiences to inspire and guide others to cultivate a sense of inclusion and belonging in the workplace. I'm Francesca, and I'm the founder of Tequity Talks, and I'm joined by our first guest, who I'm super excited to have with us, Merishka Lalla, who I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Hi, Francesca. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Merishka. I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa, and I have been a DevOps engineer, a backend engineer, a site reliability engineer, and a system administration engineer.
Thank you. How exciting. So let's kick this off. Can you share some insights into how companies address diversity, equity, and inclusivity beyond just focusing on statistics, and how companies can ensure they are truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive?
Yes, of course. So during my tenure doing several hundred interviews, because I've unfortunately been in the tech industry for longer than I'd like to admit. I hopefully don't look it, but besides the point. So in terms of what a lot of companies say on their websites is they say we are diverse, equitable, inclusive, and we also have a focus on belonging. However, when you actually ask these questions in an interview, as Francesca just mentioned, they always talk about statistics. And these statistics are things like we have 46 nations and we have offices in X amount of locations and we have all of these different ideas. But then when you actually go down to the nitty-gritties of it, when you actually then say, in engineering, what is the number or percentage of women in the department? They'll give you a rough figure. And then if you ask them, so what's actually being done about improving these numbers? Because I think the highest I'd ever heard was 30%.
Mm-hmm.
But in fairness, that was a company of 40 people. So 30% of 40 is still a kind of a low number. So they kind of got an easy one off with that. But anyway, so even then when you ask them, yes, so what are we doing about this? And they always say, well, unfortunately, there aren't that many diverse people in the industry, and we're working on it. For me, I feel like that is simply not good enough. Because if you think about it practically, there are thousands of graduates or even people looking for internships or working students or anything like that. And I'm guessing more often than not, they don't apply to your company because firstly, they don't know it exists. Or secondly, they do know it exists, but you don't use the correct language in your job advertisement. So as an example of this is, I once had a recruiter come up to me and say, you seem like the right man for the job. Not good.
Not great at all.
Exactly. Another example of this is saying superhero. Why couldn't it be something like superhuman? And it's just these little things that you should pay attention to. And just having this sort of very gendered language is usually an automatic turnoff. And also in terms of things like your job descriptions, if you have your entire stack there, and let's just say you're looking for a back-end role, this person might assume you might not actually know what you're talking about. Because if you have your entire stack saying having like experience with this, this, and this is a bonus, some people will say, okay, if it's just a bonus, you know what, I'm going to apply. But more often than not, it tends to be intimidating. And as a result, a lot of women won't actually apply for the position because statistically speaking, if men don't meet 100% of requirements, they'll still apply anyway. But a woman, chances are they wouldn't because women already feel like they deal with enough imposter syndrome. And now you're trying to put them in a position where they might be likely to feel more of it. So just little things like that, I would recommend to keep a focus on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the importance of also not assuming somebody's pronouns as well is really important. How do you believe companies can effectively manage microaggressions in the workplace and educate staff about them?
So I've unfortunately been in that situation with things like, hi guys, instead of hi everyone. And this is the start of your first meeting of the day. So it generally doesn't set a very good tone. And Also in terms of things like racial jokes or nationalistic jokes, all of that. I feel like people in today's modern age, we know what's appropriate and what isn't. So as adults, we shouldn't have to be told not to say certain things or not to do certain things. But unfortunately, from time to time, I think it is good to have some sort of flagging system. Like, hey guys, as an example, someone else could follow up the conversation with, hi everyone. So it's not exactly confrontational, but it is subtle. And in terms of the awareness and the teaching part of it, I would say, unfortunately, that does have to come from a place of management first, because more often, or management and senior staff. So that could be the senior engineers in the team, as an example. Just because they tend to be the leading force or the leading drive of whatever team or initiative or something like that. So just making them aware and giving them the proper training and basically making them the examples that the rest of the team could potentially follow. That is, I think, a very good step. And other things like diversity bots have also been quite effective. So as an example, with a previous company that I worked at, they had one. So it's something like the current technical workforce is, let's just go with a random number, 60% male. So that would then infer that 40% of the workforce is female. And then you could have a link being like, this is why, this is where we got the information, this is how we're trying to improve things. Or these are suggestions of how to improve things. Or especially on the tech side of things, there is still very triggering language for some. So a very common example of this is the master-slave concept. And GitHub has done a fantastic job with the migration of this because they've changed their master branch to main. And it's the same thing with things like blacklist, whitelist. So things like allowed list or denied list or something like that. So even just having these terms being made more public within the company and making people more aware, it's these little steps that can actually help to create awareness in terms of like, hey, I can say this, or I shouldn't say this, or maybe we should try and do this, or we can try and do that. And it's the same thing with the language used on your website. So basically using the same concept. So things like primary, secondary, instead of things like master slave, just as an example.
Yeah. I've seen companies really have parts on their website that which is advises their employees on terminologies that people used to use, and actually this is a new way to say this phrase. Now, I want to talk about transparent pay conversations and how you could describe the importance of transparent pay conversations, especially concerning the gender pay gap, and how do you think companies can address this issue more effectively?
So this is something quite a few South African companies have been very good with, because this is information which is public throughout. So as an example of this, let us say you are an individual that has a bachelor's degree, and because we're talking about the South African context, some fortunate people might also then have an honors degree. So I'm not going to go into too much specifics of it, but think about an honors degree as kind of a four-year undergrad, which is comparable to a US bachelor's degree. And then you could have candidates that have a master's degree or a PhD degree. And then you would couple that with the years of experience. So this is for a person joining a company. You could say, okay, this person has scored, I would say, in this percentile for the interview process, plus the fact that they have X amount of degrees or X amount of experience. Therefore, they would then be in the salary bracket. And this is made company-wide, and it also depends naturally on the department. However, in terms of in Europe, there have been some companies which are trying this approach, but gender often isn't very well mentioned. And there is still very much the, I would say, conversational bias of it's not really appropriate to discuss how much you might earn between a woman or even woman to woman. Naturally, there would be people like me that don't filter that will tell you anyway if you ask. Some people would be a lot more jaded. And there were actually instances with previous companies that I've worked at where someone would actually forget to remove certain documents off their desk. So someone walking past can actually see how much they got in their salary raise. And then you think about how much you're making and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So, I mean, don't get me wrong, they didn't do it on purpose or some sort of flex. But I mean, sometimes the truth will just out. And
Yeah.
in this case, you're kind of like, but how did this person get to be at this level of earning so much? And a lot of people also conflate things like your salary with your title. So basically, that means, are you junior? Are you intermediate? Are you senior? In my personal opinion, your title shouldn't matter. It's what you do that should matter. And that's the thing that should determine your increase and your raise.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, definitely on the transparency front, just to like sum up everything, it's definitely have this information available to everyone. So I know companies will have things like, if you're a junior and you want to move to intermediate, these are the steps you need to take. But then subsequently also show juniors trying to get to intermediate, intermediate trying to get to senior, or whatever the case is, exactly what you'd expect to earn should these steps actually be taken and achieved.
So looking at that, and given it and everything else that we've kind of discussed, of course it is Women's History Month. It is International Women's Day this March. How do you think, as peer-to-peer or women inspiring other women, how do you think overall women can best inspire inclusivity in the workplace from your perspective?
Cool. So as we've already discussed quite a few different topics about maybe the problems, so let's just spin it now to the positive side of things. Naturally, I would say always promoting a work-life balance is very important. Having awareness and transparency is critical. And there is one topic that we actually haven't covered, which is the topic of mentorship, leadership, and sponsorship. So if you are an ally, or if you're a woman, or you know what, you don't even have to be like, be whatever you want. But it's basically, if someone comes up to you and asks you like, okay, so what do you think about, let's just say Francesca as an example, point out all of the good things about her, be her advocate, be her sponsor, root for her behind closed doors. Let her advance to the promotion, help her get her personal growth. Because as you would say, Francesca, you would know, well, this is what she wants to achieve. And it's the same thing with mentoring. If you know where someone wants to go, just knowing that helps you find a roadmap of how to get them there. And I think it's just about people empowering people.
Thank you so much, Merishka, for joining me and Tequity Talks to address these important subject matters and help continue creating awareness in the world of technology, but not only technology, all industries. If you are watching this and would like to know more about diverse and inclusive hiring strategies, or want to join me as a guest in a future conversation, then please reach out to me via LinkedIn and be sure to follow Tequity Talks. Let's embrace diversity, champion equity, nurture belonging, and respect intersectionality in all its forms. Happy International Women's Day.